Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you're having a good week. It's been a wild one, hasn't it? We have a giant elephant in the room that we have to address this episode. It's obvious if you've been paying attention this week to any media at all. That is, of course, the indictment, arrest, and arraignment of one Donald J. Trump, former president of the United States. So, if your head has not been under a rock, you are aware of perhaps the final nail in the coffin of the former U.S. of A. This week, Donald Trump traveled to New York to report to the courthouse for his arrest and face arraignment in the court of his enemies. And I don't use that language very lightly there. I have spoken before about the nature of the so-called justice system in this country and the fact that once you enter into the court that the rules change and you are no longer playing on an equal footing. In that system, money buys you parity. For Donald Trump, he has enough money that he should be pretty well matched with the system. So up front, I have a degree of confidence that these charges will be defeated and Trump will never see a day in jail. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about this aspect of it later in the show, so I'll come back to it because the show today is not about specifically the charges against Trump. It's maybe a little bit more about what it means and, more importantly, what it all kind of portends and leads to. So I'll come back to the nature of that shortly. Now, first off, I want to get a little bit into the details of the charges because we do need to talk about that a little bit. Per almost everyone I've seen, including some left-wing legal pundits, this is a very flimsy case that is being made here. In fact, the indictment itself, which was unsealed at the time of the arraignment, has been described as a cut and paste job. People in the know say this looks like someone took a kind of formatted template and just cut and pasted the charges 34 times. That's what Trump has been charged with, 34 separate incidents of what is called felony level falsification of business records. Now, I'm not an accountant, however. I do deal with accounting and charging items to the general ledger just from the nature of my job. I understand some basics here, and I can say with absolute certainty that no one at the C level of a company is putting in charges to the general ledger of that company. That's just not happening. That's not how it's done. And that means that someone else would need to be involved with putting these charges into the ledger that were falsified. And therefore, there should be some level of conspiracy charge detailed in this indictment. And it's not there. There's also something else missing from this indictment, something that is far more troubling and far more of a problem than that. What turns these charges into a felony, you see, because normally that level of criminal charge is a misdemeanor. What turns these charges into a felony, according to the DA, Fat Alvin, is that the falsification is done with the intention of covering up another crime. That's what makes it rise to the level of a felony charge. But there is no other crime indicated in the indictment. In other words, what caused this to be a felony is secret, and we're just supposed to trust Fat Alvin that it's a crime. The charges have to be felonies as well, because if they are not, then those statutes of limitations have run out on the misdemeanor charges, and Trump would no longer be faced with them. He wouldn't have to worry about it. Now, folks, this is some serious misconduct here. This is crown-level misconduct, the kind of thing that led to the Declaration of Independence, and filing secret indictments and hidden criminal charges. Back when we were still men in Minecraft, we went to war over that. I'm just saying, it's not suggesting anything. I'm just pointing it out. The irony, by the way. So Bragg alleges that Trump made payments to his lawyer to pay Stormy Daniels and another Playboy model for this NDA, so they would keep their trap shut about what they allege to have occurred and not be dragging that out during the election. And Cohen, his lawyer, then pays these two women per the terms of the NDA. Well, what is an NDA? It's a non-disclosure agreement. Now, I've signed NDAs. Many people at my company have signed them. It's a legal document that says that we're going to talk about some things, or we have talked about some things, and we want those things to remain between us. So we are both going to sign this agreement. But if either of us violates the terms of this agreement, then we agree that we have caused harm to the other one, and we will pay a large sum of money. It's a way normally for companies to keep trade secrets and information that they do not want their competitors to have while they are working with outside vendors or entities. You know, in my case, it's with vendors. I agree that I will not disclose the rates that I am paying you as a vendor to other customers, and you agree that you will not disclose the nature of the projects and things that we are working on with you to my competitors. It's, you know, that kind of thing. You know, that's my exposure to them. And in this case, it's an out-of-court settlement between two parties that agree to not discuss the terms of that settlement. It's all very legal, both in the terms of no law is being violated when two parties agree to this, and it generally requires the services of a lawyer representing both sides of this agreement. When we get an NDA at my job, we submit it to our legal department for review. So when we pay that lawyer, and sometimes that lawyer is on a contract to our company. They're not even an employee in our legal department. They're just a contracted lawyer for, you know, that kind of work. So when we pay them, it would be classified as legal services in the general ledger, which is what has been asserted by Fat Alvin, is that when Trump, or the Trump Corporation, classified the payments to Cohen as legal services, that it was falsification of business records. And this is just bogus on its face, and it is a terrible and tortured interpretation of the law. The law is there to protect companies from being the victim of embezzlement by their employees, or to prevent companies from falsifying entries to avoid taxes or something like that, or avoid paying fees or something. It's not intended to prevent someone from paying a legal settlement to avoid embarrassing allegations. And you know this, and I know this, and everybody knows this. This is a thinly veiled attack on Trump for political reasons. And we can all see this. The DA had a press conference, because of course he did. And in the speech he gave, well, he kind of indicated what might be his theory of the case in some words that he used and some things he laid out, because he specifically said that he didn't have to provide an actual theory of the case in the indictment, and didn't have to include the alleged crime that was done, you know, that was being covered up, and thus making these felony charges. But he did mention, however, that Donald Trump, by hiding these transactions as legal expenses, somehow defrauded the voters of New York. So it seems like he's trying to insinuate that had people found out about this alleged affairs, or these alleged affairs, that they would not have voted for Trump, and that somehow that constitutes defrauding voters. And that's entirely speculation on the part of this DA. It's ridiculous. It's a travesty. And honestly, I think it's criminal behavior on the part of the DA. This is malicious prosecution and political targeting, which, as a matter of fact, could be interfering with an election, because the trial has been conveniently initially scheduled to begin January of 2024, which would be right in the beginning of campaign season for the 2024 presidential election. What a clown show. What a mockery. It's clear to me that it is the intent of this, to do just that, to mock justice. And this is the larger thing, the larger, more important piece of this. Because I have to agree with Glenn Beck, oddly enough, when he said that Trump is no longer a man, he is a symbol. I think that's a far more profound statement than Glenn Beck really realized when he made it. I think it's spot on. Trump has become a symbol of traditional America, which I think most of you understand, but some of you may not. What you need to understand is that traditional America means white America. The progressive communists in this country despise traditional America because they despised white America. They openly speak of the destruction of white America, the death of white America, so on and so on and so on. This is factual. They do not hide this. Okay? They don't deny it. They're very, very much open about it. And we should take their word on it. What we face here is that a large number of people who are traditional Americans do not even realize that there is a conflict here. They do not acknowledge that there are people who want to eliminate them. Many of these people are Trump supporters, and they still see this in simple political terms, the old paradigm of right and left. For them, Trump is a Republican, and the other guys are Democrats, and they will do everything they can to stop Trump from getting elected. For them, it is that simple. And they refuse to see anything deeper or more sinister in scope than that. The communists have attacked Trump because he is a symbol of everything that they cannot stand about this country and what they want to destroy. The fact that he was and wants to be president is all the more reason to take him down. But just in and of himself, his existence in and of itself is enough. It doesn't matter what he did or didn't do while he was in office. This has become a completely symbolic battle, and facts no longer matter. Having shifted this out of the public field and into the field that they have far more control over, the communists believe that they finally have what they need to finish the job, and they will break him no matter what it takes, and in so doing they will proclaim and profess that they have broken traditional America. He becomes the sort of Judas goat or sacrificial lamb of white America for these people. This is what happens when you fail to cross the Rubicon, by the way. Beware the Ides of March, they said. But Trump, however, is no Caesar, because if he were, they might legitimately have something to fear. Now, there's another message at work here that we have talked about before. What they are saying through this is, if we can do this to him, we can do this to anybody. You will change your mind, you will actively support the agenda, or you will be crushed by the full weight of the federal government. We are reaching full weaponization of these agencies to move against anyone and everyone who even thinks about resisting. The communists are building this machine because they have no fear that it will ever turn back into the hands of someone on the right. And we can debate the reasons why that is, but I think you can all guess what it is without me having to risk a term violation or a policy violation for the platforms to spell that out for you. Let's assume, however, that someone for the right becomes the next president. You might ask, well, what stops them from using this weaponization against the left? And I think you know the answer to that as well. Because every person inside of the government who forms this machine will actively resist direct orders, even from the president, to do their jobs. They'll resist that if they think that what they are doing, is what they believe is right. We've already seen this. There's something to be said for the nobility of that when you are refusing to do evil. Okay, it's a noble thing. It's a good thing to have that sense of duty and responsibility. The problem is that these people are committing evil and resisting good and right and moral. And in doing so, they are being praised and commended. They're being talked about openly on the media about how amazing they are and how patriotic they are for resisting the things that Donald Trump wanted to do, the will of the voters. The fact of the matter is that from day one, a new president will need to clean house up and down and fire as many people as possible across multiple agencies. And it will have to be a mass action, and it will have to include something like an outside entity to come in and ensure that, it's done to prevent the destruction of evidence, the malicious activity that could take place. If you think about the logistics of it, it's pretty mind-blowing. Imagine, do you recall when Musk took over Twitter and he had to bring in Tesla engineers and Tesla software people and his own people into Twitter to prevent the people that worked at Twitter from destroying the company while they were being, escorted out the door? It's going to take something like that at a vastly larger level to achieve. I mean, imagine if you were the new president and you said, you know what, the FBI is corrupt from top to bottom. They cannot be trusted. They cannot be allowed to remain as a functioning bureau. And so we're going to go in there and we're going to fire every single FBI agent and completely gut that entity. How would you do that? How would you do that? You would have to have some other service. You might have to call out the military, and you can't even trust the military that they would execute those orders. Just, hey, somebody has to come over here to the Hoover building and prevent them from destroying all the evidence of the crimes that they've committed. How would you make that happen? It's mind-blowing. And in that same vein, I want to get back to what I said earlier that I wanted to get into, that this so-called system of justice, the next time you hear a law and order Republican talk about, voting for being tough on crime, you need to think about this moment and what I just told you about building the machine of your own destruction. It should come as no surprise to you that our universities and colleges are rotten from top to bottom, too. Okay, they are infested with the most immoral and hedonistic humans that you will ever encounter, and I'm not talking about the students. Okay, and I could tell you stories about things that people I know that work at colleges have told me. There are people, pushing their agenda on the children that go through there. These young people, they're the educators. When the government's cleaned out of commies, the universities need to be next. When you vote for a Republican who says they want to increase criminal prosecution and legal actions to be tough on crime, the students who've been brainwashed by these commie college professors, they're the ones that are getting hired to do that job. For the most part, when these law and order types say this, when they're running for office, what they mean is administrative stuff. They mean very simple things of, we just need to prosecute more people. It's not changing the laws or adjusting things, making things more right and just, making sure that the right people are prosecuted for real criminal acts. That's not what they're talking about. It's just a flat out, hey, we need numbers here. Black Lives Matter is 100% correct that the justice system is broken. You may not want to hear that, but it is a fact. What they get wrong stupidly is that they think that it only happens to black people. This transition of power has been taking place for a long time, and we are at a point where there are DA offices across the country that are filled with people who, might in fact see blacks as criminals. But now, more and more, the people who are occupying those offices are people who believe that in order to fix all of what they perceive to be as injustice, you have to prosecute white people and other races for every violation imaginable. And the fact that they also believe in the unflinching rightness of government power just plays right into that agenda. Law and order people built this system, or at least contributed to building this system, and that system is now being turned against law and order people. And there are a lot of lessons that come from this, but I go back to that earlier statement on crossing the Rubicon. One day we might look back on this and see that it was the last vestiges of old glory. And that term, that name, former United States of America, is so apropos. Anyway, that's all the time I have for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on the next episode.